It is so good to see so many of my friends from the country come see me here while I'm in the city. Um, you've been wanting to know what life is like here in New York City. So I know you're wondering what kinds of things that we do here that are different from the way you all do in the city, in the country, just like I did when I was living there. Um, but anyway, I'm going to tell you what all I have been hearing. It's really interesting. But I've been keeping a journal so that I don't forget any details, so I'll have to refer to it periodically. And I've been helping out by being a maid here at the boarding house. And so I'm finished for the day. And so that's why I'm able to talk to you and tell you what all I have been doing. I'm working here for Mrs. Williams at her boarding house. So I'm going to share with you some of the, what I've been hearing, what I've been experiencing, to see the exciting things that are going on this year of 1789. And do you hear the music? It's really nice because, we have our windows open and our neighbors they have a live concert in their home and with their windows open, so we're able to hear the music. So I always like it when the neighbors have concerts at their home, um, because there's so much noise in the city. Like in the country, it was a whole different type of noise. As you know, we have a whole new country now, with new leadership, and the new capital is right here in New York City. And our president is George Washington. The people wanted to make him a king, but he said, no, we've had enough of kings. We don't need another king. So he is now our president. And we love him. And we're so glad that he decided to become our president. He was a great leader during the French and Indian War and the recent War of Independence. And he was also a great leader during the Constitutional Convention when we um, wrote our Declaration of Independence 2 years ago in Philadelphia. Mr. Washington is from Virginia, and he loves his home, Mount Vernon, but he also likes it here in New York City for now. He loves to take horse rides around the water, and through the parks, and you can see him several times doing that. I think he probably likes to get away by himself a little bit to do that. So, yeah, he likes the view of the Hudson River. He enjoys the theaters also and likes to go see the live theater programs and attend a play and all. And I hope to be able to attend a play soon. I think that would be nice. Did you know that James Madison has actually stayed right here in this boarding house? He's also from Virginia. And you remember him. He helped write the Constitution. He's also good friends with Thomas Jefferson, who helped draft the Constitution. I mean, James Madison drafted the Constitution, but he had help from Mr. Jefferson. In fact, Mr. Jefferson was living overseas at the time, and he sent a whole box full of books to Mr. Madison to help him write the Constitution, since he had just written the Declaration of Independence. So he understood what Mr. Madison was wanting and what he needed to do. Mr. Madison is also a member of the House of Representatives, representing his state of Virginia. But he's concerned that New York City was too supportive of Britain during the war. So he's concerned we have too many Tories here. There are still a few people who wish we had stayed with England, and that we'd stayed a colony of Great Britain, rather, and that, so that concerns him. But you know what? Most people are glad we are a new country. In fact, some of those people who wish we had stayed with Great Britain have actually moved over there. We are happy to be a free country, free of Britain, have our own government, our own rules. And when the men were writing the new Constitution in Philadelphia, no one was allowed near the building, because they didn't want word to get out what they were saying and what they were doing. So they closed all the doors and the windows, and it was very hot there. I know, can you imagine knowing that that was going on and wanting to go eavesdrop and hear. I know if I had been there, I would have wanted to go hear what they were saying. In fact, I have a hard time with that now. I, I clean the rooms, and as I'm cleaning out the fireplaces, the chimneys in each room, I can't help but overhear some of the things that are going on in some of the other rooms. And I heard Mr. Madison talking to George Mason the other day, and they were talking about something called the Bill of Rights. In fact, I think that's why they're all here. I can hear them talking about it. I don't know exactly what they're saying or, why they're saying what they are. I also think they don't realize their voices carry through the chimneys and the fireplaces, but that's okay. I'm really not gonna go out and tell a lot of people. They talk and argue about the fact that many people don't feel like the Constitution guarantees the rights of the people. And so evidently Mr. Jefferson suggested to them that they needed to add a list of the rights and liberties of the American people. We just recently won our independence, and we don't want to have to go back to being under, the rulership of Great Britain. We don't want the king to be our ruler. He took too many rights away from us. So we don't want that to happen again. Now I'm hearing something. Let's see, what was it I wrote in my journal? I'm hearing them talk about freedom of religion. And I wonder, what does that mean exactly? We know that the Pilgrims came over here many years ago to have more of a freedom of religion from what they were having in Great Britain. But does that mean we will get to worship in whatever church we want to? Does it mean that we don't even have to go to church if we don't want to? I'm just curious to know what all choices they're going to give us if this actually happens. Well, Mr. Madison says that all of us are to govern ourselves according to the 10 Commandments. Can you imagine if we all would just live by the 10 Commandments? Things would be so much easier and so much better. But he does say he's determined that our new country will not have a national religion like Great Britain did, which is what the Pilgrims came over here to get away from. He wants us all to be able to worship the way we would like to worship. And so I'm hoping that means we really are going to be able to go to the church of our choice. We don't want to have to go back to the way it was when the Pilgrims first came over, or the reason why they came over. Now, John Adams believes the Constitution cannot function properly without religious values and standards in our society. So, remember hearing about all those meetings in Philadelphia? The men would stop when they were having problems, especially when they started arguing, and then all of a sudden they would just stop and they would pray. And especially when they were having a hard time making a decision. So I also hear them talking about freedom of press. They mentioned a name. Let's see, what was his name? Peter Zenger. I asked someone, who is that? But I had to be sure that the men that are staying here didn't know why I was asking. Well, he was a writer for a local newspaper, and the New York Journal, actually. Several years ago, he wrote his own opinions about the colonial government at that time, and he said the government was unfair to the colonists. So he was in favor of the colonists and not of Great Britain. Well, he was arrested, but a jury refused to indict him. They felt he should be able to print what he wanted, and as long as it was true. Now that's the thing. They're saying that we can have freedom of press, but we have to write the truth. I think this would allow people to continue to write opinions about the government. But what happens if we don't like something that the government's doing and we feel like it's the truth? So I'm sure there's a lot of things they still have to work out of that. Of course, who would want to write bad things about our new government? It's such a good thing, and we're so glad to be free of Great Britain. So we're just all excited to see, what's going to happen in our new nation, and that we're not under the rule of Great Britain anymore. Then I also heard them talking about something called freedom of speech. Now, I wonder, what does that mean? Does that mean we're just going to be able to go off and talk about whatever we want to um, in public? Well, that'd be kind of nice, not have to worry about getting arrested. But before and during the recent Revolutionary War, British soldiers would arrest people who spoke against the king and the government of Great Britain, and they would stop. They would make people stop having meetings about the freedom. So they had to meet in secret, which we've heard a lot of, especially Samuel Adams. Remember, he was meeting in secret with his friends to talk about what they needed to do. But can you imagine having to always meet secretly just to say what you feel like you should say? So we'll see if they actually do that. I've also heard some people say they want us to be able to gather and discuss, protest, or march in favor of whatever subject we're talking about. Well, I don't know about that. They also want people to have the right to take a piece of paper, gather names together of people who don't like what the government is doing. And this one surprises me. Are they going to allow people to gather, in a big group to protest the new government if they don't like what's going on? Sounds like that would really be hard to allow them to do. How are they going to be able to keep the people from becoming a mob, such as what you remember what happened in Boston in 1770, when people started arguing and then they started shooting at each other, and the Bostonians and the British soldiers started shooting at each other, and of course that's part of what started the war, or a lot of people say that's what helped start the war. But several people were killed that day. Do we want to have that again? I don't think so. These laws they are talking about, they do scare me a little bit. But I also think President Washington and the new government will do the best they can to keep us safe and to make sure that we are protected while giving us these rights that we have not had before. I did hear the men say something really funny the other day. They said it was a good thing that John Adams was not in Europe during the time they were writing the Constitution, and even now as they're writing the Bill of Rights. It seems he is not fond of compromise. It's either black or white with him, nothing in between. And the men were having to make several compromises. When you have that many people together, you can't all agree on the same thing. So they were kind of glad he wasn't here. But I have met his wife, Mr. Adams' wife, Abigail. She's a very nice lady. And she's also very smart. She learned how to read and write when she was really young, which most girls didn't get to do during that time. Even now, they don't always get to. In fact, a lot of people say that Mr. Adams will even ask her for advice. Can you imagine that? And she wants women to be able to have the right to vote. But that didn't happen yet. So maybe someday it will. We hope so. She wants to make sure that girls get to go to school to learn and read and write as she did. And so more and more young girls are getting to do that. And thanks mostly to her. So she found ways to educate herself to be able to read and write. She has read a lot of books. And so, like I said, she's trying to get John to put women's rights in the Declaration of Independence. But that's not going over very well with the other men. I heard her tell stories about watching some of the battles during the Revolutionary War, the recent War of Independence, that when they happened near her home in Boston. Well, to protest the tax on tea, she quit drinking tea, which was a big sacrifice for her, and started drinking and serving coffee instead. She always supports her husband and did not complain when he was gone for so long in Europe. Instead, she just got on a boat and traveled over there to see him. Now, not too many women would have done that. She also ran the family farm while he was gone. And a lot of women wouldn't even know how to do that. But she has learned how to make a lot of decisions and think for herself. I've also heard people describe her as having a sunny spirit. She's very good friends with Martha Washington, President Washington's wife. Mrs. Adams has been known to say she admires Mr. Washington very much, saying he's a great example of modesty. She's also friends with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, which I find interesting and funny because her husband is not very fond of Mr. Franklin, but she is able to have a friendship with him. Speaking of women, I heard there were women spies during the recent war, that even President Washington, of course he wasn't president at the time, but that Mr. Washington sent women out to be spies for their side. And so this really helped our side quite a bit. The war actually helped make people aware of the important roles that women can have in the communities and in our society. And so that's good because that's helping those men get to see that women need an education. Some women even wrote letters of protest against the British government. They fed the Patriot soldiers. They warned the soldiers of where the British soldiers were. Because, a lot of men think that women are stupid and don't really pay attention to what's going on. But they were paying attention and helping. They helped sew a lot of the uniforms for the soldiers. Some of them even put on men's clothing and fought in the war. And some of them didn't even tell anybody that they were women. And so they pretended like they were a man. Some of them, that you knew they were women, they were just fighting right beside their husband in the war, just because they believed so strongly. And I cannot imagine ever doing that. I don't think I could do that. But I'm excited about the idea of maybe women having more rights, being more involved in the community. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about this Bill of Rights and what Congress decides to do about them. I'll continue to try to find out more information and get back with you and tell you what's going on. But we have to keep it a secret right now because I don't want the men in the boarding house to know that I'm overhearing what they're saying. I don't want to lose my job. After losing my husband to that awful carriage accident, I have to be able to provide for me and my grandchildren when they come to visit. And so Mrs. Williams is very nice to work for, so I want to keep this job so that I can continue to live here at the boarding house. Many of you have asked me, what kinds of things do we do here in the city that are different or even alike, like what you all do in the country, what I used to do when I lived in the country. And so I thought I would show you with some of the things I have. And I have my granddaughter, Olivia, here with me, and she's going to show you some of these things. So I took notes of what all I wanted to share with you. So I'll have to refer to those a little bit. So I might even answer some of your questions you may have. Now, just like I know most of you grow your own vegetables and you hunt for your meat. And Olivia will show you the men here do too. They hunt. They have the guns they hunt. They also would have rifles, but this is just one example of a gun. They will get the animals for the meat, but they also will use them for the skins to make rugs, to make coats, whatever, to help stay warm. So that's one thing that they would do, much like what you all do. We do have a farmer who brings us eggs and milk several times a week. And we have a small room to keep those things cool for a short amount of time. And like I said, we also have men. We have a friend who hunts, so he gets the meat for us. Okay, now I have to go outside and pump the water to bring it in, much like you do. And I put it into this wooden tub, which some of you probably have a wooden tub much like this. And so we put the water in the wooden tub, bring it into the house, and use it to wash our dishes. We also use lye soap that I've made. And so I know you all make a lot of lye soap too. So we make it much like you do, made from the animal fat and lye by pouring boiling water through the wood ashes that have been saved in a large barrel. The lye and fat are mixed together in a big kettle and stirred all day until it's finally solid enough that we can just get a wooden scooper out and get some and then put it in the tub here to wash our clothes or to wash our dishes. Now, I have this nice little scrubbing board that we use to wash our clothes, and Olivia's going to show you, and she would have the lye soap, you know, to get the stains out of the clothes. No, it's okay. Yes, okay. And then we'd rinse it out, and then we would hang up the clothes, and we have these clothespins that we use to hang them up with. And if we're not able to hang them up, then we just lay them out on these big racks. Sometimes we might hang them up by the fire, the hearth inside. Okay, so that's how we would wash, which, like I said, is much like what you do. For our baths, we use rose or lavender to make it smell nice, because lye does not smell all that great. So we'll fill a big bowl with water and use a cloth to clean ourselves. It takes many gallons of water to wash clothes and sheets here, as you can imagine, because you don't have as many in your house. But I have to wash the sheets and all and even a lot of the clothes for all the people staying in the boarding house. So it takes quite a while to have to wash all that. When my granddaughter is here with me, she helps me quite a bit. So, let's see, what's another? Oh, we have a privy out back, kind of like your outhouse that you would have out behind your house. And that's where we have to go to relieve ourselves. But in the night, we usually don't want to go outside to have to do that if we wake up in the middle of the night and have to go. So what we do is every bed in the boarding house has a chamber pot under the bed. And so that's what we use every night. And then it's my job to go around under every bed every morning and to dump it out into the privy or the outhouse out back. Oh, so not a pretty job, but that's what I was hired to do. Somebody had asked me if we read a lot of books. Oh yes, I do. The most important book I read, though, is the Bible. And then sometimes I also read the newspaper. When we get newspapers here at the boarding house, I always like to read the newspaper to see what's happening in our new country. I read books of poems and sometimes Aesop's fables. A schoolmaster comes here to the boarding house to teach the children of the boarders. And when my grandchildren are here, they are able to, he teaches them too. So anyway, we have a horn book here. Olivia's gonna show you, and that helps her learn her letters. And then she has a primer that's I believe written by, let me see, I believe it's written by Noah Webster. I'm not sure, but and so she has that, and then she has an ABC book, and then she also has a slate board that she uses a slate pencil with, which I don't have right here, but so she can practice the things that the schoolmaster is teaching her. Okay, so the thing is, though, the #1 textbook is the Bible, because if they can't read the Bible, they can't read anything. You know, the schoolmaster feels like if they can't read the Bible, they can't read anything else. So one of our founding fathers is Fisher Ames. He's concerned that the Bible wouldn't be used in the classroom, so he wants to make sure that every classroom, no matter where they are, that they have a Bible in the classroom and it's being used. A lot of children, many children, are not able to go to school. #1, they have to work at home. As you know, being out in the country, a lot of children have to stay at home to help out on the farm. So if their mother is able to teach them, then she definitely will do that at home. Or sometimes they'll get together and have one of the mothers teach a lot of their children. So I was blessed to be taught to read and write by my father. So, because I wasn't able to go to school, because where I was, they didn't allow girls to go to school. I make my own clothes. There are several wealthy people here, though, who go to the general store and buy their own clothing, or they buy it from a dressmaker, really is what they do. And so it's kind of fun to see the different fashions here, which I'd never seen till I moved to the city. And they have one just right down the street. So I like to go look in the windows and look at the pretty dresses. Now the children have a few things they can play with. Inside, when the weather's bad, they have to play inside. But most of the time they play outside, and their favorite games are tag and blind man's buff. They climb trees, they ice skate in the winter, and the girls always have a handmade doll, which Olivia's going to show you her little rag doll that we made for her. This is just one example. But now some of the other games they would have, she's going to show you about putting the ball in the cup, which really is a little bit harder than you think it is.
Try to get the ball in the cup.
There you go. So, but you have to do it without using your hand. But so they spend some time with that. Another game they would play with, which one do you want to show us now, Olivia? Oh, ring toss. And just try to toss these rings onto this stand right here. Another game that especially the boys play are marbles. And we happen to have a few here. You probably all have some marbles yourself. Sometimes they might be wooden. Not always though. And we have some really pretty, yeah. And you always have to have a dice. Now there are some people who do not believe that you should play games with dice. But most people are okay with that. Another thing that they would do is play a little flute. And so we happen to have one here for her that she likes to play with and try to sound like the music that we're hearing from our neighbors. Okay. No, it's okay. So those are just some examples of some of the toys they play. Well, someone asked, oh, where did the British go after the war and they lost? Well, many of them did go back home to Great Britain. But you know what? A lot of them stayed here because after they were here, they understood why we were fighting for our freedom, and they believed in that, and so they wanted to stay here and live in this new country. Many of the soldiers married some of the young Americans here, and so they stayed and they're raising families. We had soldiers from Germany that the British made them fight with them, and so they came over here to fight against us, but they didn't really want to. So many of them ended up staying also. And like I said, a lot of them married American women. They liked what we were fighting for. They thought it was good that we had these rights and that we should be free from Great Britain. Okay, I have examples of money. You know how they talk about a sixpence, pieces of 8, whatever. I have some of that. Which we used a little bit in the country, but they used this money more in the city than we all did in the country. So, and of course my candle lamp. We have to have that. And I like to write letters, so I always have pen and ink here and my journal to write in. Okay, I thank you very much for coming to see me and to find out what life in the city is like and how different and how alike it is to what you all experience, and also to hear, to hear the news that's going on right now. Thank you.